Welcome everyone to this essential webinar on green plans. It's a topic that's front of mind for everybody in the NHS estates facilities and any sustainability leads right now. Today we're going to go and talk about what they are, when it's due, what the purpose is, and the solutions, and how estates teams can turn strategy into measurable actions. With the NHS committed to be a net zero health system, green plans, they're no longer guidance. They're an essential operational and reporting requirement. So today, I am very pleased to have Finn joining us. He is an absolute font of knowledge and brings a very unique and valuable perspective to this conversation. Finn is a qualified chemical process engineer from New Zealand with a background in optimizing energy use and reducing carbon emissions across complex industrial environments. Over the past 18 months, he's been deeply embedded in the UK's compliance landscape and working closely with NHS organisations and the public sector estates to help them navigate sustainability requirements and regulatory expectations. That engineering mindset that he has, combined with that hands-on experience across both hemispheres, makes him a fantastic guide to help us explore how NHS Green Plans can be put into practice. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Finn to kick us off. I should say a little bit of housekeeping before we start. All of our cameras and microphones are muted apart from myself and Finn, but we 100% encourage as many people to ask questions as possible. If you can please put any questions that you have into the chat or into the Q&A tab in the top, and you'll be able to upvote any questions that people ask that you want answered. There will be a section at the end of the webinar for us to actually go over all of those questions, but please, if you can put as many things in as possible, and if anything does end up in the chats, that's fine, I will move it across. I believe we actually have a question already. If you want to stick any questions or anything that you want to ask into the chats now, I did notice somebody had the hand up, please do. I'll come back to you in the meantime, but without further ado, I will hand over to Finn.
Oh, thanks very much, David, and thank you for everyone for showing up and taking the time. Yeah, let's jump into it. So, as David sort of outlined, my goal today is to answer the following questions for you. So, NHS Green Plans, what is it? When is it due? How can we help? What has changed since last time? Obviously, we've all been through this process before. Why do we care? And then what are some common issues that we've seen working with other NHS trusts through this round of NHS Green Plans? Cool. So what is it? Well, the purpose of the NHS Green Plan, it's really a sustainability strategy developed by NHS organisations in the UK to help the wider healthcare system, so NHS England, to reach their net zero carbon emission targets. They outline how NHS Trust or Integrated Care System or other NHS body will reduce its environmental impact whilst maintaining the high quality patient care that the NHS is well known for. The key objectives that we're going to go through in each, the key objectives of the NHS Green Plan. So obviously, first and foremost, is to achieve net zero. So that's supporting NHS-wide goal of reaching net zero emissions by 2040 for direct emissions and 2045 for indirect emissions. And I can explain that for anyone that doesn't know. I'm happy to go through that, and at the end, it's pretty straightforward. Obviously, with the achievement of net zero, so what will come out of that is a reduction in the carbon footprint, so minimising emissions from buildings, travel, supply chains, and of course, medical procedures. This will then drive an improvement in air quality, so reducing pollution from NHS operations, as I said before, transport, energy use. Another objective is to enhance sustainable procurement. So obviously, our supply chain is a huge part of our emissions and our footprint. So ensuring that NHS suppliers align their environmental targets to what we are doing, and that's in line with the NHS Net Zero Supplier Roadmap, as well as PPN 0621. Touch more on that later. And obviously, a big focus is an increase in energy efficiency, so investing in renewable energy and greener infrastructure. Another one, of course, promoting sustainable travel, so encouraging the use of electric ambulances, the use of cycling for commuting, and use of public transport where practicable. Finally, a reduction in waste and single-use plastics. So a huge focus on improving recycling and looking for products we can use in a circular economy, developing those initiatives and helping reduce our landfill and waste. Cool. When is it due? So the guidance is refreshed every 3 years. So NHS Trusts must update their green plans on that timeline to the level of that revised guidance. As you can see here, the revised guidance this year was published on the 4th of February, and we are now in the trust compliance phase of this little timeline I've built, and with the deadline for publication of the board approved, signed off green plan by 31st of July on the trust website. Now I have heard some whispers amongst the industry that this hard deadline of 31st of July is not as hard as once thought, and we do have a sort of grace period, I guess you could call it, up until October. Now, obviously, if we can meet the 31st of July deadline, which I believe, most trusts, even if you haven't started, we still can do, but we do have that buffer if need be. And then obviously there is the annual update. So NHS Trusts must revise their plans each year with updates on progress towards the green initiatives that they have set out and committed to as part of developing that green plan. How can we help? Well, our solution, basically, we propose to fully develop your trust's green plan, and that will be completely aligned with the latest national guidance and tailored to reflect your unique sustainability journey. For each of the key areas, we will first set the scene. So relevant context, why it matters. We'll then reflect on the trust past performance, highlighting achievements and lessons learned. And then finally, that'll all deliver a forward-looking action plan supported by a concise strategic narrative that outlines your trust vision and next steps. This process will really document, this process will produce a document that will not only sort of meet that regulatory requirement, but it will become a really, really powerful tool for the trust to use to engage stakeholders, drive progress towards those green initiatives, and demonstrate leadership in sustainable healthcare. The process that we propose to go through, so there's an initial gap analysis, so we'll take a look at the green plan that you've previously published, in 2022, reviewing that for sort of strengths, and we'll say gaps and opportunities for alignment rather than weaknesses with the current guidance. Then we'll go through the process of stakeholder engagement. So there's obviously, a huge range of focus areas within the green plan requirements, and not one person is responsible for all of those. We obviously recognise that. So there's a process of engaging people from across each trust to make sure that we're getting the right input to build that green plan. Following that input, we'll go through the process of drafting the green plan, making sure it's all up to regulatory requirement, and then host a feedback workshop with all the key players again to make sure that everyone's sort of on board, the message is clear, we're happy with the targets, everyone's on the same page. Recycle that, go through another draft and finalisation, which will then go to the boards for approval, sign off, all the publication that will happen internally with the trusts. Now, that process is how we see it happening in the most streamlined fashion, but the real important step is step number 6, and that's iterative collaboration. So really, we will just work with you as to how it best suits you. This is your living document document. It's not something that we, I suppose, own. We're really helping you get the best value out of this green plan process. So working with you, open channels of communication to make sure that everyone is on the same page and everyone's happy with the outcome. What has changed? So obviously the new guidance was published in February 2025. That's had a significant update since the guidance published in 2022. So a few sort of focus areas that we've identified. So estates and facilities, we now have a mandatory phase out of fossil fuel heating systems by 2032. Similarly, oil heating systems are to be removed from all NHS trusts and sites by 2028. And there are new requirements set out in the Green Plan guidance for energy efficiency improvements and renewable energy integration. Supply chain and procurement, integration of NHS net zero supplier roadmap requirements. I'll talk more about that in the next slide, as well as a minimum of 10% weighting for net zero and social value in all procurements. And then, as I've touched on previously, an enhanced focus on circular economy solutions and reduction of single-use items. There's also been an update on the reporting requirements. So now we have annual updates to the sort of green plan, and that's reporting on progress that we've made against our green initiatives. The green plan itself, the first instance, has to include quantitative progress data required for each focus area. So those are KPIs for how we're going to measure our performance as we go through this 3-year green plan cycle. So the NHS Net Zero Supplier Roadmap, as I said, it's heavily intertwined with PPN 0621. So all suppliers that have contracts in excess of £5 million per annum must have a carbon reduction plan in place. And that carbon reduction plan has to be delivered in line with PPN 0621, which outlines their Scope 1, Scope 2, and a subset of their Scope 3 emissions. So that's now, that's what we are having to do at the moment. As we go forward from 2027, all suppliers to the NHS will have to have a carbon reduction plan, and that has to include all of your Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, which is quite a big step, I might say, from where we are now and to where we are required to be by 2027. So bringing your suppliers on the journey is a really, really important step to make sure we're getting and meeting that compliance threshold. And then in 2028, the guidance here is still to be worked out, I think, but product level requirements. And that means for each and every product procured by the NHS, it will have an associated carbon footprint. And then so your supply chain will be very accurately measurable in terms of your carbon footprint. Why do we care? There's a lot of chat about a topic. What is the underlying principle? Why do we care at all? So the NHS basically needs the trusts and ICB's help. They can't do it without the engagement of NHS trusts and integrated care boards. So the green plans that you will develop will support the NHS in meeting their net zero goals and help them improve public health outcomes. Obviously, there's the legal and policy requirements. So the Greener NHS program mandates that every NHS trust must have a 3-year green plan aligned with that national net zero target. As well, health and environmental benefits. So greener practices improve air quality, both indoor and outdoor, and patient wellbeing is a flow-on of that. Obviously, financial savings and efficiency. This is where my background really lies in terms of improving your operational efficiency, reducing energy spend, adopting low carbon technologies, and improving how you operate reduces your costs, enhances your sort of resilience, and frees up resources for patient care and sort of step changes in other areas. And then the NHS being one of the largest companies or employers in the UK, there's a certain aspect of leadership and public trust. The NHS needs to lead by example and demonstrate that corporate social value and responsibility to align with the government on these sustainable goals and really be industry leaders and not wag the tail. So before I jump into some common issues that we've seen around the other NHS trusts that we've been working with, I just thought I'd ask the question to see what stage those on the call are at with their green plan. So yeah, just if you could please, hopefully that's all popping up for everyone, should be in front of what you're seeing. Just click and submit your answer, and then we can, all completely anonymous, and we'll get an idea of what people are doing and how they're progressing on their green plans. And you don't need to worry, we're not going to dob you in to the NHS if you haven't started just yet.
For everyone there, what I'll just do is I'll just resubmit this poll as a multiple choice. So just bear with me 1 second. I think it will come up slightly nicer if we do it that way. So just give me 2 seconds and I will sort that out for you. Okay. All right. There we go. That should work a little bit better.
Thanks, David. Very good. I believe I can move on in the background if people can still see my screen. Thanks for filling out that poll. It's really interesting to see where everyone's at and how they're progressing with their green plans. So I'll basically wrap up now with some common issues that we've seen across clients that we already have through this round of NHS Green Plans. A massive one has been governance and engagement. So obviously we recognise that every trust is different, and different trusts have different levels of engagement, different governance structures. But what we've seen is, unfortunately, there have been a few trusts that we're working with that really haven't had well-established roles, responsibilities, and so that's led to really disengaged sort of group in terms of getting this green plan produced. Nobody wants to take accountability, and it's been difficult for us to find the right people, get the right people in the room. And it's not that people don't want to take action. It's just that it hasn't been well defined, and we're able then to sort of identify the people that do want to make a change and allow them to step up and take on those roles. So it's been an interesting process, but definitely a gap for some trusts. Another one is policy and goal setting. So some trusts have had quite significant gaps in existing policy, so sort of travel plans, those sorts of things, and that's made it quite difficult for determining a baseline to then go further and build out KPIs for measurement of performance towards new goals. So that's just meant a little bit more time sitting down with the people and the stakeholders and figuring out what's realistic in terms of setting those goals. And then of course the supply chain. The supply chain is a massive part of what the NHS does, and it's a huge thing that the NHS is asking procurement teams to do in terms of complying with BPNO 621 on the timeline that I showed before. So how we're supporting that, we do have capability to support that, and we're working on a solution to how we can help NHS Trust with that as well. So there will be a later webinar for how we can help you comply with BPNO 621 and meet that NHS supplier roadmap timeline. So working with trusts on getting that all figured out has been one of the challenges, I would say. So that's all I have in terms of content. Happy to go through any questions. As David said, feel free to write them primarily if you can in the Q&A tab. Otherwise, I'll be looking at the chat and Q&A as anything comes up. So feel free to fire any questions through.
It might also be a good opportunity for people on the call to start to have a discussion about where you are yourselves in this journey, because it's a great opportunity for you to start a dialogue with other colleagues within the NHS. If you want to ask any questions or perhaps get people to just start talking about the different areas or where you are in the plan, it would be a good opportunity. and also just to share your own experiences about where you are and any anxieties. It's a good chance just to start that.
Yeah, and then I'll echo that statement. So as I said before, that the NHS needs help from all the trusts, and so I don't see a problem with the trusts helping each other basically. So feel free to chuck anything in the chat in terms of lessons learned and how anything you've done that's made the processing a little bit easier for yourself that other people might benefit from. It's really a team effort to get these green plans across the line, and help move the NHS towards that net zero target.
We have a question in from Peter. So the question is, can you help with funding from the Green Plan pot?
We've absolutely supported trusts with applications for funding before, and I know we supported trusts with funding for the recent sort of round of solar energy, or what I sort of grants basically. So we're in the process now of helping them look to spend that. And we've gone through the process with PSDS before with a number of trusts that have been successful there. So absolutely we can help you go forward and get the right information to make a good looking application for any funding that is available. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess a good question would be, how can people get in touch with you to sort of help, to get any advice?
Yes.
I do think that's it's a good opportunity.
Yes, of course. So my details are on screen. Feel free to take a screenshot. My name should be on the meeting invite. Obviously, more than happy to field any questions that you do have, answer any calls. I believe if you do have any, do email within anyone with a Balrock sort of suffix, it probably will find its way to me. So yeah, by all means, reach out.
Brilliant. And we have another question from Peter as well. So is the funding limited to complete a project within 12 months?
I'm not entirely sure on that. Sorry, Peter. I know the solar funding, there's a deadline for completion of an operating sort of solar system. So I would imagine it would be a similar structure. I can absolutely follow that up for you though and get back to you if you like.
If anybody else would like an answer to that, it might be a good idea to just drop a thumbs up onto the question, or even better, a comment on the Q&A tab to Peter's question. I'll mark those down and make sure that we get those answers over to you. Yeah, take this opportunity. It's the last chance to get any questions in before we go. But as Finn said, the contact details are there, so please do get in touch. If you just want some advice, you just want to talk through, it's a good opportunity to get some professional advice on this. We're here to help the NHS with your green plan, so please do get in touch. If there are any other questions, please drop them in the chat now. Drop them into the Q&A tab, I should say. Cool, we do have, yeah, brilliant. Fantastic. Well, if there's no other questions, then we will wrap up today's session. I say thank you to everyone who's attended the call. We hope that we can that it was helpful and that we can help in the future. So please do use us. We're a resource for you to get in touch with and discuss. So we will wrap today's session up, but thank you very much. And please do reach out to Finn. Thanks
very much for your time, everyone. Have a nice day.
You too. Right. Bye, guys.
Cheers.